We'll move on to the next item of business, which is topical questions. And at question number 1, I call Jackie Bailey.
To ask the Scottish Government what action it is taking in light of reports by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine that the number of people waiting in A&E for over 12 hours is almost 100 times higher than in 2011.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Our acute system, like others across these isles and beyond, is under considerable pressure, which has resulted in too many patients waiting for too long in accident and emergency. These waits often occur due to a wait for an inpatient bed, which is why we are working to address capacity challenges. We are investing, as part of our overall budget offering of £21.7 billion for health and social care, we are investing £200 million to improve front door services, tackle delayed discharge and expand hospital at home, which will improve patient flow through our hospitals and ease pressures on accident emergency. I met with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine earlier this month and took the opportunity to listen and provide updates on the action being taken to support improvements and reduce delays for patients and staff.
Jackie Bailey.
Presiding Officer, the Cabinet Secretary needs to wake up to the reality which is getting worse on his watch. Ambulances are queuing up outside emergency departments, waiting to admit patients, sometimes for hours. Patients are lying in corridors, seriously unwell, as evidenced by nurses in the recent RCN report. In this year alone, over 10,000 Scots have waited in A&E for over 12 hours, and the Royal College of Emergency Medicine estimate that this is likely to have resulted in 309 excess deaths. Waiting too long is dangerous. When will the Cabinet Secretary get a grip and fix this mess?
Cabinet Secretary.
I've always recognised that there is a relationship between long waits in accident emergency and the increased risk of harm, which is why we remain committed to delivering improved A&E performance. I set out to Jackie Bailey in answer to my first question the areas that we are putting forward through the budget that I know the Labour Party is not voting for, around hospital at home, around improving front door services, around making sure that we tackle delayed discharge and ease the pressures on accident emergency. It is an area that we are working with boards on to deliver, and the most recent delivery meeting to discuss this with boards and including the First Minister was earlier this afternoon.
Thank you, Bailey.
In December 2011, 78 people waited over 12 hours to be seen in A&E. In December 2024, that figure was 8,904 people. That's how badly the SNP are letting the people of Scotland down. That's not an improved performance. Now, we know that delayed discharge is putting strain on patient flow through hospitals, and that impacts on A&E. Around 2,000 patients who are fit to be discharged are stuck in hospital, largely due to a lack of social care, and £1.5 billion has been squandered on this since the SNP promised to eradicate the practice. Does the Cabinet Secretary understand that health and social care partnerships responsible for delivering social care across Scotland are facing significant challenges and are cutting care packages? It was John Swinney who took funding from them when he demanded the return of reserves to help balance the SNP's books. So what is the Cabinet Secretary going to do to reverse the cuts his boss put in place?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I am very clear that there is a direct relationship between hospital flow and the issues that we are seeing within accident emergency departments, which is why we're making the investments that I repeat to Jackie Bailey that we are within the budget. But I'll tell Jackie Bailey an area of great concern that I have that has a massive impact on the potential capacity within social care, in which I had a meeting with social care leaders on just last week, and that is the Labour UK Government's increased employer national insurance contributions, which is going to be devastating to our social care sector here in Scotland, because it is going to rip jobs out of the sector, it's going to rip capacity out of the sector, and that is why it is critically important that the UK Government fully funds this incredibly damaging move, instead of relying on Scottish public services paying for a UK Government's reserved decision-making on tax.
Thank you. I call Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am sure that we all agree in this chamber that any long wait for patients in our A&E departments is regretful. Can the Cabinet Secretary set out any further measures or information in the upcoming budget that we have outlined as we look to alleviate pressures on A&E services across Scotland to ensure the most optimal and efficient care possible for patients? And will he again encourage members across chamber to support the budget at stage 3 to see the key funding put in place?
Cabinet Secretary.
Absolutely. I thank Emma Harper for her question and the importance of the investment that's coming through this budget. Our health and social care services need this budget to pass. So, of course, I pass on that encouragement. We have a clear plan to reduce waiting times and delayed discharges, supported by the full weight of the £21.7 billion going to health and social care, but specifically the £200 million targeted investment as part of our budget. And we will shift the balance of care from acute to community by ensuring every A&E department has a frailty service linked to community re-enablement. This will enable people experiencing frailty to be referred directly by GPs and the ambulance service to specialist frailty services as an alternative to admission or attending A&E where their needs may not be met in the same way. Additionally, we plan to deliver 150,000 extra appointments and procedures this year with more GP access, which will ease accident emergency pressure.
Thank you. I call Sandesh Gulhani.
Declaration of interest as a practising NHS GP. Hundreds of people have died needlessly during the course of this Parliament due to having to wait over half a day in A&E. That's hundreds of families who have lost a loved one, lost a mum, a dad, brother, sister, son or daughter. NHS staff are overworked, overstressed and suffering moral injury. Enough is enough. This isn't regretful, as Emma Harper suggested. It's wrong and distressing. Will the Cabinet Secretary apologise to these families? And how can the public, families or NHS staff have any confidence that this government is taking the crisis seriously?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Of course, I apologise to anybody who is having to wait for too long to access services, or indeed staff who are having to communicate that and are not able to deliver the job in the way that they would wish to. I absolutely understand the point that Sandesh Gulhani makes, one that I was discussing with the Royal College of Emergency Medicine around the point around moral injury. I totally understand that. That is why the investments that we're making in this budget are so important. They are setting us on a trajectory of relieving the pressure within the health service. And that's why I would encourage Sandesh Gulhani and his colleagues to vote for the budget.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Question number 2, Graham Simpson.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government for what reason Scottish Water continues to pay bonuses to its executives when public sector pay policy reportedly prohibits this.
Minister Alistair Allen.
Scottish Water has a long-standing exemption on this point of public sector pay policy in recognition of its operating model and the need to retain staff in competition with the private sector. This arrangement has been in place since 2011. The framework for bonus payments has to be approved by Scottish ministers. The current framework was approved in advance of the 2021-27 regulatory period. The Scottish Government is satisfied that the correct process has been followed by the Scottish Water Board. Scottish Water is publicly owned, which means that, unlike private companies elsewhere, monies raised are reinvested in our water industry. On average, our water charges remain lower than in other parts of the UK.
Graham Simpson.
Well, if the Minister thinks that this is an acceptable situation, I would simply ask the Minister to rethink that, because some of these bonuses are obscene, as unions have already described them this week. The Herald yesterday revealed that bonuses of 3 Scottish Water executives amounted to £330,000 in 23-24. 70,000 went to the Chief Executive, Alex Plant, as a relocation handout. £70,000. We now have a situation where water bills are going to rise by an inflation-busting almost 10% across the country, and workers are in dispute with Scottish Water. Doesn't the Minister see that it's completely wrong to hand executives massive bonuses while squeezing the pay of ordinary workers at Scottish Water?
Minister.
Well, the member in that question and in his original question suggested that public sector pay policy prohibits what has taken place. I have to say that is not the case. And as I've mentioned, public sector pay policy has a presumption against non-consolidated bonuses and suspended bonuses. However, with the agreement of Scottish ministers, Scottish Water has had a pay structure that includes performance-related pay since its creation in 2002. And that situation is simply because of the fact that Scottish Water operates in an environment where the other water companies around the UK are in the private sector, and Scottish Water has to recruit from that pool of people.
Graham Simpson.
Presiding Officer, I don't think the Minister gets it. When the public see big awards of cash to public sector executives like this, and we've seen this before, haven't we, at Ferguson Marine, where executives there were handed massive amounts of money, and there was a big hoo-ha, quite rightly, about that. And I think the same applies here. Scottish Water is publicly owned, it's owned by all of us, and we shouldn't be giving massive amounts to executives. And there are, I think, only 3 of them that are getting this money. I think the Minister ought to reflect on this, and particularly at a time when Scottish Water staff are in dispute, he needs to think about how that looks. So I again ask the Minister to rethink.
Minister.
As I mentioned, these decisions by Scottish Water had to come to ministers for approval, but on the point he makes about Scottish Water and the industrial action that has been balloted on, I would of course urge both parties to resume negotiations to find an agreement on that. On his wider point about bonuses, I think it's worth saying that despite the inference that suggests that performance-related bonuses are irrelevant in this situation, without commenting on the details of the bonuses themselves, it is worth looking at the fact that the performance of Scottish Water in terms of pollution, overflows, etc., is improved. For instance, the overall number of sewage overflows graded unsatisfactory in Scottish Water's annual return is a situation that has improved. Independent body SEPA assesses 86.5% of Scotland's entire water environment as having a high or good classification, up from 2014. And also, Scottish Water continues to represent a good value for those who pay for it, and particularly when compared to comparable water bodies in other parts of the UK.
Thank you. Richard Leonard.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I remind members of my voluntary register of trade union interests? Can we go back to the central question here? Does the Minister agree with me that it is wrong that the bonuses of the bosses in Scottish Water have risen 10 times more than the pay rise now being offered to the workers? Yes or no? And if he does, what does the Government intend to do about it?
Minister.
The Scottish Government does seek to ensure that executive pay is kept under control. And for instance, I can comment on the situation in the wider public sector on that. The public sector pay policy has a presumption, as I say, against non-consolidated bonuses. And we have sought, for instance, that when new chief executives come into post, that there are controls around wages and bonuses put in place. I don't dispute the central point that the member makes about the scale of these bonuses, but I return to my original point and my original answer, which is that, contrary to the inference in the question, this was done publicly and within the rules.
Thank you. Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. 24% of Shetland's total water system is reliant on old asbestos cement piping, twice the national average. Why is it the case that public money is being spent on bonuses and not on a swifter pipe replacement programme?
Minister.
Well, as I mentioned in an earlier response, Scottish Water, on its wider performance, I think does have a good story to tell. But I do recognise the point the member raises about the need for continuing investment. There is continuing investment. In fact, £1 billion has been spent on investment in the the water network around the country. We would, of course, seek to do that, seek to do more of that. Scottish Water is taking action, is committing up to £500 million to improve water quality, increasing monitoring of the highest priority waters, and indeed, as I mentioned earlier, spills and overflows as well.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions.